me pull it up on my phone and see if we. Oh, see. What?
They're like all people, so like home.
Oh, for real?
Have you not seen it? It's like this thick. And it has the personal cell phone and addresses.
Really?
And email. Yeah.
People using
Yeah. Is it not like this?
It's pretty large.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
It's literally like an Excel sheet too. It's just like their address, email, cell phone.
I was in the house with her, so she gave me the listings, you know, I mean, those people in Gallup. She called me up. His house and shit.
Literally says like cell phone.
Yeah.
Watch it, that clock made it stay right here. I wouldn't trust it. You didn't say that from us. How many pick you guys up a new clock? Oh, no. Rusty's supposed to get us a new clock. You only got in the village. Only guy has a clock shop in town. He's strong on the ball.
She's got a
Just
lot
a
of.
test to see if it calls
Get you one of the big digital ones you can see better. Military time, right? The atomic clock. There you go.
Like to call the August meeting work. Start with pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Megan is off today, so I'll call roll. Mayor Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Payne?
Yes.
Mr. Beck? Here. Mr. Hunter? Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Okay.
Minutes to review. Do we not review the minutes this month?
So, no, well, I'll bring last meeting's minutes to our next meeting. I don't see them in the packet.
Public comments?
You doing it on the, what the hearing's on or off? What's the hearing about? How do we fill the public comment for that and just record?
Do you have that broken out on here?
They should do it for a reason.
Oh,
It's the hearing.
so the question is, are there any public comments not related to the Kroger Road rezoning tonight?
Moving on to reports.
Not too much. We have some stuff later that we'll talk about. We have that application is normal. obviously, big ones, we're here for right now, so we'll cover down on some stuff. Yeah, in discussion, we got some.
Nothing to report this month.
Ongoing business.
Nothing else?
New business. Rezoning application for program.
So we have a public hearing. This is where John indicated we should have the comment period for that particular project. So see if we got anybody listed.
Oh, there.
Go ahead.
So we talked about the drive lane last time I was here. Has there been anything with that? Because right now, the main drive is directly in my drive, directly across the street.
So let's have them present and then open it for both comments. You want to present your application?
Sure. So this would be an application to have a zoning amendment for the 56 acres on Croton Road that was recently annexed into the village. It would be a zoning amendment from ED, which is the default zoning class that we got when we came into the village, to PD, plan development. So we've submitted our application and have detailed things in there, as well as a development agreement, or proposed development agreement and some PD standards. And I'm happy to answer questions on those. It'd be a residential subdivision, approximately 90 homes.
Anybody have any questions? On that? You want? You not.
Just streaming on.
So now if you want to open public comment.
Yeah, so I'll step in real quick. So what you guys are doing this evening is under your ordinance 1103.07. This is your review of the map amendment with the public hearing, where basically you all need to consider the review considerations provided within the code. You all have 30 days to make a decision at the close of the public hearing this evening. So basically, this is the chance to review the application in public and take public comments. So because this is advertised as a public hearing, I would go ahead and take public comments, and then you all should ask and review the application and have your questions for the applicant ready to go at the end of public comment. So I would open it at this time.
You're talking 90 homes on 56 acres, so how big is the lot size? And how many acres does ponds take up?
So I think the build out development is roughly, it will be 40% green space. And the lot sizes have shifted around. The frontage is 65 latest. The acreage will vary depending on the lot.
So I guess my next question is, why 90 homes on 56 acres instead of 70? I'm not opposed to this development going in, but I'm opposed to it turning into the center. People are moving out here from the center because it's so crowded. People are coming to the park, I thought you were to the center, because it's so crowded. But then we're going to build a development that's jammed in, just like the rest of them. So I guess my question is, why 90 instead of 60, 70? Why not make a bigger lot size for out here?
Yeah, I think, there are economics involved in that decision-making process. This is a builder that does about 140 homes a year. So they have, decent test case. They know their market. They know what works for them.
You could put 1,000 on it, it's so hard. I get that,
Okay.
but it's, we're out here, I think it's too many.
It complies with the green space standards, lot size standards.
I'm gonna reserve my comments for Dan, and then I'll also have Stephen here from D3 who can go over our engineering comments, but I do want to give maybe the public a chance to speak.
I'm gonna stand up. I heard that was the rules, so I'm gonna follow the rules, Rick. I, through Rick, emailed you some comments I had on the project. And I'd like to discuss those briefly. Cul-de-sacs. I hope you understood my drawing and what I'm saying. But there's a real long cul-de-sac that goes to the northeast. There's 38 homes off that cul-de-sac. The problem with the cul-de-sac is fire, the school bus, and the snowplow. In the cul-de-sac, there's a lot more snow to move. And it's a lot more for the neighbors to shovel back out after you plow them in. And trucks have a hard time making the turns. School buses can't make that turn in the cul-de-sacs. The fire department, their biggest truck, what do you tell me? It takes about 12 years to get around in those when you got cars parked in there. I highly suggest a stub road. Take one lot out, because here is your chance to tie 3 residential developments all together. Because this one, you got the same property owner to the west, and you got MI Homes kind of to the north. And I know there's a ditch down through there, but it's a great way to tie those in instead of everybody having to go back out to Croton Road to get in and out. It's your chance to plan on down the road for future development. It is going to happen. The stub with design buses can pull in and they can back out. Yes, they're still backing, but in the cul-de-sac, you got cars, kids coming everywhere. And if it's dark at 7:30 in the morning, it is a safety issue. School bus drivers will tell you that. I'm not against, there's a small cul-de-sac to the north. There might be 6 homes off of it. It's probably not the issue. But that's a long stretch. And there's no way when that bus goes down there and turn around safely and get back. Stub road's a great thing to do. Mailbox kiosks, you're gonna have to put kiosks in. According to the school superintendent, it's a great place for kids pickup. Right at the mailbox. If you could widen that street by another 10 feet, so people can get over when they're getting mail, kids have a place to stand, collect, get on the bus. Yes, that bus is still gonna go down the end of the street and turn around. In the stub road, the schools are very much in favor of that. It's a dead end road. The 2 entrances off Croton Road. The houses along Croton are so close that you're gonna be looking at everybody's backyard. I recommend that both those entrances, you take the first homes off. And possibly the one at the top of the hill, take 2 homes on each side of that road out. What you need to do is discuss with the developer. He's always got extra dirt, the mound. As Julie talks about, we want to keep a rural look, a rural character. People driving Croton Road every day don't want to look at these people's backyard. If they can see mounding, some nice landscaping, it just presents itself better. I really hope that you'll take a look at that and the advantage of that. Yeah, I wish I could, in my mind, come up with a different way in or off Croton Road. The way that road is laid out, it's rough. When the field on the east side of Croton Road gets developed, how are you gonna line houses up for an intersection? Maybe that's John's forte, I don't know. Dropping the lots along Brook Road, 6-foot mountain, landscape. You got one tree in each front yard. If anybody drives down 605 right before you get to the county line, and they're 5-acre lots, but there's homes to the east. I'd like for you to count the number of trees that have been planted in there, and it still looks very, very barren. My suggestion, and we have done this with either a medium or a large, very probably a medium tree the size of the lots in the backyard. You know, 10 years from now, what that will look like and the advantage of having shade. It's something that the developer can put in, and it will pay dividends for them as they're trying to sell lots. I don't see anywhere where this is 1-car garage, 2-car garage. Reading your code, I don't see where it's at. If it's 1-car garage, you know what kind of mess you're creating because everything is stacked on the side of the house. You got 2-car garage, at least you can get one in. 14-foot driveways to the garage versus 16. 14, you're stepping out in the mud if you got cars side by side. 16, you got a better chance of stepping out in the grass. Again, as it is developed, as people start living there, it will make nicer looking development. And that really doesn't cost that much. Sidewalks. I told Greg the other day, 4-foot sidewalks, he and I can't walk side by side. Because he's about 5 foot wide and I'm about 4 foot wide. But realistic, a 4-foot sidewalk, you can't walk side by side. And if somebody comes at you, you know, your wife can sit behind you, but you still have an issue. 5 foot gives you a lot more room. It's not that big a deal for the developer to do that. Bike paths should be 8 feet. I think Mr. Beck has a lot of trouble with, or a lot of trouble, has a lot of experience with paths. And he may understand that more than anybody, the need of that 8 feet. The sidewalks, 4 feet. Ponds. The ponds on here, are these wet ponds or dry ponds? They need to be wet, and they need to have fountains. If you want to keep a pond looking nice, fountains will turn that water and keep the pressure. If they're wet ponds, you don't do anything in there, the HOA is going to be spending a lot of money trying to get it cleaned up, or it just becomes an eyesore. So again, I think that's a zoning issue that you folks can write in your requests for the developer. Street lights. Street lights may be the HOA's expense, and it may not, depending on how it's written. But street lights don't do that much good. A pole light with a switch in the house in each lot. If you have company coming over after dark, if you have company leaving after dark, you have a light to turn on with that pole light. That's a safety thing. It makes it look better. I don't see anything mentioned in here about things like that, just to make it an overall better looking development. The fire department doesn't like the 10 feet, and I wish he was here between the houses, because if you got to set a ladder up to a 2-story window, 10 feet's not enough. The ranch it is. The 10 feet you can't set up. Now they'll come along and say you can stick a ladder down into there, a ladder truck down into there to get to it. But it is a safety issue. Last thing I'm going to say is keep in mind the decision you're making today will affect for 10 years and longer. So I think it's your job to make sure this is a quality development. And I didn't talk about eliminating a bunch of lots. I talked about making some changes to make it better. Area percent. I'm done.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
I do have one more task on this, on the driveway getting moved. I don't want any street lights in front of the house. That's another issue with the driveway in front of the house. Is they're potentially, looking at the plan, they're gonna put street lighting directly in front of the house. It's been dark out there for years. I've got really quiet neighbors. They haven't complained to me at all. Yeah, I kind of like that. Part of why I moved there.
Are there any other public comments, or I'll ask Stephen to give some engineering feedback on his review?
I'll go up there?
Yep.
All right. All right, good evening. I'm Stephen Kopchak with V3 Companies. We help the village with engineering services. So we've been taking a look at this preliminary plan from an engineering perspective. So I'm going to talk about traffic review, pedestrian connectivity, streets, and utilities. So as part of the initial discussions on the development, we informed the developer that they had to do a traffic study. So they looked at the numerous intersections surrounding the site. Ultimately from that, so we got that back a couple weeks ago, and the study did not warrant any turn lanes on Croton Road or any direct improvements related to the development. It did note that in the 10-year build out, just from background traffic that's anticipated to be generated, there are some recommended improvements for the Wilson Road intersection at Main Street, and then the Main and Hartford intersection. Those are again based on background growth assumptions, but not directly related to this development generated traffic. One other thing that was noted in the study was that the line of sight should be topographically surveyed from those entrances, just with the topography and grading. So that's something that has not fully been vetted out in the study. So on the pedestrian side, we had early on when we looked at the site, we recommended that they look at connectivity towards the school through Gallery Street. So they have addressed that with the layout. We did request also the 8-foot path rather than the 6-foot walking path they've shown. 8 foot's pretty standard. ODOT even goes up to 10 or 11 foot now for most of their paths. I think in conversations with the developer, there's maybe some further conversation to happen in that regard. Obviously, they're showing 6 foot in what we have right now. And then the other notes that are different from a typical zoning code on the sidewalk. Typically, you would have sidewalk along the frontage of the site. There's no connection on either side of the site, and we felt like the connectivity to the school was more important. So that's not something that we requested them or required them to do. And then we've also noted the 5-foot walks versus 4 foot. The village standard would typically be 5 foot. But again, as part of the plan development, that's a consideration. So for the streets, village code minimum is a 30-foot roadway width for local streets with one side parking. And so we've made that comment to the developer, but currently they're showing 26 foot wide streets.
27.
27 foot. All right, and we noted street lights. So where we've landed right now is the minimum number of street lights to maintain safety of pedestrians and at intersections. So we've got lights at the intersections, the cul-de-sacs, and I think at the one location where the path ties into the road on the green space area. But we're trying to maintain the starry night as much as we can. And then the street trees was another consideration. We talked about putting the street trees behind the sidewalk so that you still have the aesthetic, but they're not digging into the utilities or the sidewalks as much for the roads. It was mentioned the cul-de-sac. So right now, it's a little misleading in the plans that there's a label on one of the details that shows 60-foot right of way. That's not talking about the cul-de-sac, that's talking about the roadway. They've got a detail at the end, which is the cul-de-sac width, which shows 43-foot radius. It's an 86-foot diameter cul-de-sac. In conversations with the fire department, I believe their code is 96 foot, so that's a comment that's been made, so that they can navigate the cul-de-sac. So final item, utilities. In general, for sanitary sewer and storm sewer, which would be the village-owned utilities, it's very straightforward. There's a main sewer trunk line right next to the site with easy connection. There's not, one thing I like to look at is, if there were future developments that needed to tie in, would we need a deeper sewer or a larger sewer? We don't feel that that is warranted here. The trunk sewer location, it's adequate just to focus on this site here. The storm sewer is pretty straightforward, drains the roads. There's some storm in the back of the yards to collect that drainage, pretty standard. And water is provided by Delco. Stormwater management, so they've got what appear to be wet ponds proposed in there. We haven't gotten, I don't think they've gotten to the point of designing them, what depth they'll be. Typically, if they are more than maybe 10 feet deep or so, will require aeration. And there's a balance to the depth for aquatic life. So we will certainly be, as we get into plan review, be keeping a close eye on how that pond's going to function. There's actually some EPA standards for management of wet retention ponds. And then finally, the last side, and for stormwater management, the development will follow the Knox County stormwater regulations. Finally, the floodplain. So the site has some floodplain adjacent to it. It's an approximate zone A, which basically means there's not a detailed flood study in place for FEMA. So to make sure that we're protecting new structures and not impacting upstream or downstream, the developer will be doing a flood study along that stretch of stream to ensure that it's managed appropriately. Questions on?
What would that floodplain be, 100-year floodplain?
So they delineate the 100-year floodplain, and that's what FEMA would put on their flood insurance maps. I think, so for this one, they will probably have to model, there's multiple storms that, when you do a detailed FEMA study, you'll have to do the 10-year, 50-year, the 100-year, and the 500-year. The 500-year won't, there's no regulation tied to it, but it will help identify areas that could be at some risk.
Steve, you're okay to hang out for a while in case we have more questions?
For sure. Yeah.
The commission is okay. I put together some comments. I apologize. I am sometimes or always long-winded, but one discussion that's been ongoing in the village, and I know what this commission is related to our sewer capacity. So before we get into this subdivision in particular, I didn't want to fill the commission in on some research that Stevens Partners at B3 have been working on for us. So we've been really assessing the sewer plant capacity, how that affects our future, how the recent growth could impact that. Generally, I think we all have some pretty good news coming out of those discussions over the past few weeks. So rough projections when I got here about 8 months ago were that the village could sustain an additional 850 additional residents or approximately 350 additional homes. I used 2.5 people per phone to come up with that. So the engineers have a preliminary plan together that could double that available sewer capacity simply with plant upgrades within the existing footprint of our sewer plant. They're estimating right now about $4 to $5 million in cost, which is much less expensive than a full expansion. So in the short term, the village is working with our engineering team right now and through our town plan on moving in the direction of a plant upgrade within the footprint, but also over the next 10 to 15 years, understanding that we will likely, depending on growth, need a full plant expansion. That being said, I did want to give the commission a little bit of a timeline on this proposal before you today. So Schleybaugh Whistle Stop first came to the village, and I had to go back to the administrator's calendar because I wasn't here. Around April of 25, to have some preliminary discussions, I think with John and Terry, the administrator at the time. Out of that, about 6 months later, they came back to the village, actually came before this commission in October of last year to give a real general preliminary design, which very closely matches what we're seeing here today. We had another discussion in November with Schleybaugh and, the group, the ownership group representing the landowners. And then we proposed an amendment to the PD code requiring an NCA indication, which, since that was the goal and first envisioned, we've been kind of letting any new developers know that's happening. The annexations process started for Schleybaugh in January of 26, and it completed in July with final council approval. And they submitted their rezoning application on July 14th, which brought us to today. So I'm going to speak for myself and maybe somewhat John, and you can jump in. From an administrative perspective, we do feel this is a good subdivision plan and design, and I'll get into a little bit of why that is. I'm not saying it doesn't maybe need a few tweaks here and there that we can discuss as a commission and maybe the developer at the end of this hearing. But from an administrative side, the developer has agreed to a 5 mil NCA fee. Council will be considering a max 10 mil NCA fee, so it falls within that. They'll also be agreeing to TIF district on property. And then they have agreed to $30,000 per acre of land dedication fee to the village. We anticipate it's going to be about a little over 3 acres of land dedication. So that's what that falls. We are currently working on how the TAP fee schedule is going to impact this development. I'm kind of the in-between guy. At a certain point in a planning process, we do want to be fair to what our rates and fees are. At the same time, I do anticipate that the village will consider a cap increase in the near future. And so how long do we hold rates for a current developer versus the next wave of developers in May? So here, the administration is comfortable recommending a 5 mil NCA fee and TIF for this project for a few reasons, not any one of which necessarily is make or break, but taken together, I think justifies a lower NCA fee than we would be looking for other subdivisions. The first and I think most notable is that the way they calculate density is you take the total number of houses divided by the total acres being developed. The density on this project is 1.57 units per acre. Compared to other plans the village has seen, most of those are hovering around 3 units per acre, so it's significantly less dense than other plans that are being brought. The other thing the village understands is that this is the first housing development in the village for 25 years or so. This project will kind of be the first in testing that market for how desirable housing is in the community.
One of the notes that the developer did make, speaking just on the density in general, is after they start doing test market, there is a possibility that they may want to increase lot size at some point. It was just a generalized note. They'll see kind of how the market's going and what's selling and what's not, and there could be an increase in lot size, which would then decrease in density as well. So you to know in the back of your mind that that's not a guaranteed conversation, but that is something where the developer is very mindful of the density, and that is something that they're taking into consideration that may be a little bit considered to make the lots.
To that point, I did a deep dive of the code today. Generally, if a developer wants to increase the density, that would require coming back before planning commission, but our code's actually written that in situations where the density is being decreased, that's considered a minor adjustment or a beneficial adjustment, and therefore doesn't require a full re-review of the plan. So they're testing the market. The other thing we need to keep in mind is Schleybaugh has been a partner in the community for a number of years. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, they did kind of complete Centerburg Meadows subdivision. Is that right? Yeah. They're investing in the revitalization of the old Centerburg Respiratory with 11 townhomes in the village. So they've been a good partner with the village up to this point, and so
But you're doing a lot of roadway and stormwater management improvement in that project.
Yeah. So, just wanted to give a layout of why myself and John will be presenting that instead of, you know, that growth-related impact. The TIF district and the NCA, I wanted to give this commission and ultimately council a little review on how that goes. Generally, an NCA fee has to benefit the community that is paying the NCA, but there's no rigid structure to how much, how little, or whatever. Generally, though, if we're going to collect an NCA fee, there has to be a benefit to the communities paying those NCA fees. So some of the projects we've targeted, obviously, are sewer plant improvements. That's the big one. Community-wide transportation needs. So as we talk about the Hartford and Main intersection that Stephen mentioned, you know, should we be assessing that future improvement to this single subdivision? We should not. They're not creating it. It's going to create itself anyway. But given the growth in the village, when we improve that area, an NCA makes a lot of sense for that. We obviously have had a community discussion about law enforcement. As population, or if population grows, law enforcement becomes more important. And I know the community at some point is going to need to investigate a police division. And then obviously other community infrastructure and facilities. One potential project could be the street maintenance garage. Given growth, we do need more room for our equipment, things like that. TIF revenue is a little more restricted, and that's why it's not a direction that we may necessarily always want to go. TIF revenue must be spent within the boundaries of the district or directly supporting that district. And generally the difference is where NCA revenue is kind of new revenue being paid by new residents. TIF revenue comes from basically redirecting taxes from other entities like the county or the township to the village instead of, you know, basically you're kind of taking from somewhere else to bring it to the village. There are good reasons to do that, and I'm not saying, I've had a conversation with the county administrator. He's amenable to us, you know, doing a TIF. It won't ruin our relationship on this particular project, but too many TIF districts do begin to adversely impact those other government departments.
Property taxes is really, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And additionally, we know where your property taxes go, look it up, it's a big deal. You do a TIF district for other entities because you are taking their funding stream away from them, even though it's inside of it.
And then the last thing that I think I need to provide both council and this commission, if I'm doing my job, is we do need to understand what the revenue would be off of new housing growth in communities. So at the 5 mil rate, we expect the NCA to generate $875 per home per year. That is being also paired with a TIF, which would make up the other 5 mil difference. So generally, we're going to bring in about $1,750 per home per year. That's based off the developer's projection of $500,000. So overall, that's $155,000 per year in NCA and TIF revenue. The income tax, I've conservatively estimated that a household of $100,000 income could support a $500,000 house. That's low. But that would be $89,000 in additional income tax revenue for the village. Village property taxes on that value home, projecting $71,700 annually off property taxes. Sewer fees, so obviously this would go strictly to the sewer fund, but we would generate, based on an average bill, which unfortunately right now is $150 a month. Sewer fees would be $160,000 annually at the current rate. And then we can't forget sewer tap fees. Those are one-time fees that we receive as each house taps into the system. Those are total $445,000 one time. And the whole concept of tap fees is that those go toward large improvements that are needed because of more people needing sewers. So most of those tap fees would probably go toward the design or down payment of the sewer plant expansion expenses. So all around, the total annual new revenue to the village would be $476,680.
Remember, some of that's handicapped because you can't use it anywhere inside your general fund.
Correct. So I just wanted to know that you guys know that we have the numbers. I can answer questions on the numbers if we need to. That's all I have. I think there are a number of issues out of this public hearing that I think the commission will want to talk about. We may want to decide where we want to either request the developer bring modifications, or consider whether the commission would want to put approval with conditions in September. Obviously, the commission is free to vote to recommend approval or recommend denial tonight, but I don't know that anybody is pushing or expecting that tonight. I think what we'd like to do is be able to come back in September with a good final plan for everybody to be ready. John, do you have any comments?
I mean, you covered down most of the stuff that we talked about. I kind of want to see if you all have any comments before I make comments. I don't want to steal your thunder if you say the same thing.
Ask some questions. The lots that you were talking about, are those lots 1, 24, 25, and 50? That's the one.
They're the one closest to Croton Road.
Yeah, 20, it'd be 25, 24, and 50.
There's another one on that.
One,
Yeah.
right next to the trail. Just to know too, they're not all the lot west aren't, I think you said 65. They all vary. The 65 was the minimum. If you look at somewhere like 80, somewhere 70.
Another question I've got is about the cul-de-sac. So are we talking about like hammerhead type, where you go into it, back out and up? Stub, what's the reference you're talking about?
Well, and he's the engineer. I'm surprised there wasn't anything talk about connectivity for future development, which I think is kind of his department, not mine, but I think it's pretty important. A stub, instead of a cul-de-sac, you stub right to the property line. That one house on the left or the right, you eliminate. That, there's a paved driveway that gets put in where buses can pull in. The guys plow snow love it because they're not plowing people in. It's a place to plow snow. That bus can back out and come back out.
Like a hammerhead.
Yeah,
We'll refer to
yeah.
Quinlan subdivision.
And if you stub it right to the property line, the next developer will have to commit. They can put that stub where they want, in my opinion. But the next project has to stub their road right to it, so you have connectivity. Otherwise, if you're in this subdivision, you want to get to high school. Well, that's a long way to get out there. If your buddy's living right across the ditch, how do you get over there to see him? All the way around. Just, you look at any of these subdivisions, they're all connected for future development.
There is so they've given right of way on the drive straight into the development, all the way across for what could be a future connection there. Not the cul-de-sac towards the school, but there is an allowance for future development.
They have two.
It's the one.
There's one where you're missing all the houses on the way to cul-de-sac.
Right
You
next
got
to-
Road E.
Yeah.
Is one of them. But at the end of that cul-de-sac, if you're gonna take a path, you might as well stub it and make it a lot safer. The schools really want it.
I think their issue they run into right there at the cul-de-sac is you have to be a bridge. You cross the creek.
Is what?
You cross the creek,
Yeah,
so there'd have to be a bridge.
yeah.
That's probably why it's future.
Well, okay. But if you stub to the road, then the next guy comes in, it's the same property owner as this. And
But you're dropping in the creek is I think the issue they're running into. That creek is the edge of the boundary.
okay, they dedicate that land to the village for future road. You get them tied in now, so that down the road, you get two more subdivisions, you can get a third one in there real easy to look at. It's continuity between the developments.
Thank you.
I think the main point you made, like, I don't know if you would say that definitely, paving, but making this easement for the village. So road E would be an easement, and I don't think that's, I think that is, yeah, it's just not listed as that.
What doesn't show it on the drawing, there's no mention of it. And you don't want a double strip. You gotta go right to the property line.
I think we're still in preliminary review,
Okay.
you
Well,
know.
while you're doing, eliminate that cul-de-sac. And I know Greg knows it, I'm a school guy. But bus drivers, I mean, you gotta have pity on them, trying to get back in there and turn around at 7:30 in the morning, winter when it's dark.
I would assume they're just gonna make a loop.
But when you have cars parked on the street, there's not enough
Yeah,
room
I
for
mean,
that.
just on the main, and that's to say if the neighborhood allows for street parking.
Well, I'm assuming you'll be parking on one side, cul-de-sac, you allow parking. Okay, it's something that needs to be addressed, it is a big safety hazard. But I would hope the developer and engineer can get together and work that out.
Will there just be pickup spots on the main entrances?
They still gotta get back there and turn around. 38 homes is a long way. Have those kids walk all the way down to the first intersection.
I'm saying in road B, out road A. Loop,
That's what I said.
Loop Road E,
You would.
in road B, out road A, or vice versa. It's just one loop with stops. Where you're not going in a cul-de-sac to turn around. Your
Road C,
commentary assumes that everybody's gonna be picked up at their door.
no, absolutely not. Your pickup can be where your kiosks are for mailboxes.
Right.
And I'm assuming one will be there before the bend.
So I'm struggling to see the turnaround issue if we're coming in A, out B, or vice versa.
Well, Road C is a dead end cul-de-sac.
Road A comes off, Croton. Dave, and so does B.
Yeah,
Basically, that square.
yeah.
Timmy's gotta walk, little Timmy will have to walk from the back, like you used to do.
Well, it's a different world today, and you start asking first graders to walk down there, every soccer mom is gonna drive them down there, and you're creating more of a traffic jam. I still think you can stub a road and make it easier on your snow, make it easier on your bus drivers, and make it easier on the fire department. You plow that snow in a cul-de-sac, you start in the middle and just keep pushing in those people's driveways, yeah, they'll have the administrator on speed dial, because they will be upset. I'll give him Zach's number, okay? And they have a legitimate gripe about that, I think, because there's other ways to solve it.
So what do we do with the other cul-de-sac?
The other cul-de-sac, you don't quite have the traffic, the short one, they can walk, what, 5 houses? But they're not walking 38 houses.
Okay, what could be done with the line of sight issue? And, phase 2 there. What could be done to correct that? I mean, if you go out there,
You're talking about where it goes into Croton Road. That was a question that we had for Stephen was,
because that's the highest point. I think they're coming out there with that high point. David, that there's no way, I mean, it's still a lot of.
You talking about on
See
the,
that.
on the south road?
he's talking about A.
Okay.
I don't think, so you could do a survey to assess exactly how the product
They're
is
gonna
looking,
do,
and it's not been done yet. So, I mean, I think if it can't be done, you know, they can look at grading of the entrance drive potentially, or relocating that. But, it did mention, so the traffic study did mention vegetation management is an important element of it, if that's a factor, but if it's just topography, it's a little more challenging to work with.
Right.
Make that work.
I think that's a consideration people look at.
But both A and B will be studied.
I don't think they specified one, or the other. I think those are both.
The money didn't leave the village yet, but with the intersection of Main and Park Proposal to be done in that, what are we talking about? Specific?
Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that with or without the development, over a period of 10 years, that intersection is gonna need a turn lane on Hartford or Main.
So the issues they observed were queuing, so it's the back end of cars. It's not actually the speed or timing through there. So there's a potential that looking at, just, if it's just this one development providing the signal operations, could allow you to not be backing up past the turn lane, length. But,
Houses. Certainly, that.
well, so yeah, I guess I said the turn lane, the lane length. But yeah, so potentially the turn lane would be another effective way to address that. There's not been any real detail of what that would look like just yet. But I think that's the direction we're getting to.
What we talked about.
Turn lanes.
But you do have big parking both sides there.
On Main.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the Hartford, you've got.
I mean, there's some spots that are delegated to be used for deliveries and things, but those are also becoming. So I see less concern on Hartford than Main. If we had to go the route of a turn lane in 10 or 15 years, we might have to move some parking to facilitate that. In terms of road width, I feel like we can work within our road width.
Another question after phase 3 and 4, it's not delegated, which, what we're gonna do with 3 and 4. Well,
I think they're just saying they're not sure whether they're gonna do them in 3 phases or do it in 4 phases. So, how quickly they finish the northern portion there, which I don't know.
Where does phase one begin?
It's kind of the southern entry point
Oh,
along the road edge.
Andrew, this is more just for curiosity. Do you guys foresee that you're gonna seek, if approved for preliminary, final plat approval on all 4 phases, or maybe just? Okay.
We generally do 1 phase at a time.
And that's fine.
Nice. With phase 1 starting furthest from the school, would the sidewalks or paths to the school be completed with phase 1, or would that have to wait until we got all the way around phase 4?
How does your infrastructure usually go? Would you build only the phase 1 road, or I'm guessing, one of the concerns I think that came out of fire is that you might need 2 entrances as you build out. So would you build maybe the roadways for phases 1 and 2 at the same time? Or if you don't know the answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure they've made a finalized plan. There was a lot of discussion about which they do first between 1 and 2, whether they come in and build out kind of the central area, particularly back to the common area. Also, kind of readjusting phase 2 to include the corner of phase 1. But I don't know that they've made a decision. I think they would usually take the infrastructure to the end of the phase, basically.
My concern is that if part of what we're wanting out of this is connection of that side of town to the school, that if phase 3, 4 don't happen, then do we never get that connection on this development over to the schools?
We throw our language in, or on that. What'd you say? We could probably write, which is development agreement about the trail
The bonding.
or London.
But it also, so the trail as laid out right now is, I would say, relatively unimpacted by the rest of the construction site. I don't see a reason why it couldn't be constructed. You don't really like the sidewalks and just one home to come.
Yeah, or the back half of
The trail, yeah, the trail would likely remain untouched.
So I'm taking some notes for out of this meeting so that we can work with Schleybaugh. We also have something together. So, I know we need a topography study, we mentioned that. I think a discussion I'd like to have with Schleybaugh is complete the mixed-use path around the subdivision in tandem with the first phase. That would create the connectivity. Sidewalks here or there. I mean, I think we might have a deeper sidewalk discussion in a bit, but that could solve that problem if the developers need.
Do you want me to, I can bring that part up.
Yeah, why don't we?
One of the things that we talked to the developer about is just overall cost in general. Brought up in conversation about the trail. Steven and I and Rick were talking about the potential to, what we would call the outer side of the development. So you'd be going down road, I guess that'd be on the outside, down around the cul-de-sac, and then all the way around, doing a multi-use trail there instead of a sidewalk, and then nixing the other sidewalk all together, and then connecting that multi-use path with just the part that goes down toward the school, and then getting rid of the part that kind of goes around the pond on the, basically the east side. It would create, or it has the potential to create a better walkable neighborhood instead of having double sidewalk everywhere, and then potentially having a conversation with them doing, putting that under the HOA's responsibility instead of homeowners having sidewalk to maintain the entire time, so and shovel in the winter. Just have that multi-use path instead. So those are like some of the things we talk about tweaking where we have the ability, because it's a PD district, we can talk about changing some of those requirements. Just trying to get more people the ability to walk or utilize the trail better, especially if they're gonna use it for school.
Talking about trail, about asphalt.
About this side.
Well, I think if we did a multi-use trail instead of the sidewalk in general, I think we would make them the same. It's easier maintenance for these way long term.
I think what we've been getting at is, I do think there's a cost of construction and a certain amount of concrete walkway costs money. And if we're just gonna have an undersized mixed-use path and undersized sidewalks, can we take the same amount of money and create a better walking path that doesn't cost the developer any more money and maybe works better for the neighborhood and walkability? And that's, I think, what John and I want to try and have a discussion about. But it would, to this commission's approval in the future, it might look like not a sidewalk on every side of the road in front of every home.
Can I ask a question about?
Mhm.
If you don't have sidewalks in front of the houses, then are the kids essentially walking the street?
You would have sidewalk on one side of the road, so they would always have a path to go down. The other question too with sidewalks is that, so if you're concerned for sidewalks is children's safety, or who's gonna maintain all the sidewalks when they walk down?
Right.
Right, so like,
I
that's why.
understand that. But
So,
if
so
the homeowners.
the thought would be, right, and then who's gonna enforce it if they don't? The thought would be if you could have one multi-use path that hugs the outside rim, which would get almost all the kids, and you can put a crosswalk in if you need somewhere. They could walk the multi-use trail to wherever the designated bus area and or mailboxes were, instead of having sidewalk everywhere, you can still have it, just hug it.
Then it's always, who's gonna maintain the path, and who's going to shovel the path in
HOA.
it?
You
Yes,
want
you-
people to stop.
Yeah, I mean, there's no really, it comes back to, there's not a lot of things who maintains it, whether it's in the back of your house or in front of your house. And a lot of places just
It would
have,
still be in the front.
they both, some places have both, like a path and.
I think the point is like the HOA would be required to maintain it. So there's some structure there, there's,
I
you
understand.
know, there's revenue there to do it and hire it out versus like really on each respective home.
I do understand that, I'm not sure. There's a skeptic. Sorry.
That's fair.
Last meeting, we talked about the HOA, how's that going out? Like, when does the developer turn it over to the HOA?
Completion,
Yeah, the turnover is usually,
Each phase completion,
completion, full completion.
so again, that question, would be the only put in phase 1 and 2.
Then the developer is required to run the HOA the entirety of the time.
So you guys are in charge of lawns, grass, seal coating of all the paths.
right, so, yeah, they generally, we usually set up HOA immediately, right? Along with the, when you put your first restrictions on, you also need to have your HOA formed with bylaws attached to the restrictions, right? So the HOA entity is created, the developer just controls it, you know, and they, usually in our restrictions, we say turnover dates the earlier of last lot sold or when they opt and have a group of homeowners willing to take.
I think that them holding the HOA for as long as possible is the best for them.
Yeah.
They've traditionally done it through the entire build up.
So because of the development back here that was changed hands, why has that one been playing out the way it has? We charged that fund back there. Everything else we've talked about for years, there's no HOA, it's been developed back here. And that,
Talking about Centerburg,
So
Centerburg,
Meadows.
sorry.
About 5 years, but not really ever.
So they took care of that pond for 4 years. There is an HOA there and they've turned it over.
It is now.
Yes. So, but they manage that HOA throughout the duration of the build out. In fact, they didn't charge dues during that 4-year period. And I think that's what caused such this, you know, the stir is because they didn't collect dues and just took everything on for that 4-year period. People were surprised that dues were gonna start when it ultimately got turned over. Was my read on the situation.
Basically, slave lot took over, completed the subdivision. They all took over.
Mowing on,
Everything.
Yeah.
But we tried to get that public back then.
Yeah.
To make sure that.
I want to premise, Slay Ball is a very good builder. But we have experienced some who aren't good, and then the HOA controlled by the developer becomes a profit center. It's kind of like a timeshare, they can charge you whatever you want. But I have full confidence Slay Ball will not do that. I'm surprised the residential tip. I'm assuming that's a 1075.
Go ahead and explain, because I'm gonna be working with the attorney on setting it up, so go ahead.
You're not familiar with 1075?
Numbers I'm not, but a tip I am.
75% tax break for 10 years. After 10 years, then it goes to the full amount. But Ohio law today says you've got to make the schools whole, because that 75% is coming away from the schools and the fire department. I'm assuming that Zach's familiar with that.
We'll go through that process when it arrives, yeah.
So Greg Daniels will be, so you understand tips, the concept behind the tip that I've always proposed and that Greg will be working on is realistically, we would like to capture the missing millage off the NCA off the tip. Likely with some county level revenue, but not capture or keep, however it ends up being written, fire or school revenue.
Well, I'm assuming you've been through this before, and you as a developer have to make the school whole on that money that they're missing, correct?
You know, that's correct.
And I think, is there confusion with CRA where there's an abatement? Is that what you're referencing?
No, it's a tip. It's a 1075 tip. That's what's used all over Delaware County. They're tipping all them damn residential developments, and they don't need to do that. Because everybody still wants to build there anyway. They're just giving them more money. But it got changed 7-8 years ago. I might be wrong in the time, but to instigate a 1075, the school does not have a say on it. But the developer, somebody has to make the school whole for that money they're missing. I know Zach's looking it up right now, and he's a smart guy.
But again, since the goal was never to capture school revenue in the first place, you know, it's somewhat irrelevant. I mean, it's relevant to the discussion, but in terms of us running our numbers, what a tip would do for the village, we're never accounting for any school revenue in that calculation.
So the 75% cuts the school tax.
Yeah, it says that,
Right.
yeah, if it's over 10 years.
But a 1075, the school doesn't have any say on it.
No, it says, if it extends beyond 10 years, it requires formal approval and/or compensation agreements with local officials. Or if it's 100% per year, it requires school board.
Okay, I'll do some research on that.
I'll let my lawyer.
Got a question back. Yeah, so on Crescent Road, that road paved maybe 3-4 years ago, and it's already hard. So are you guys gonna get the county involved with repairing the road before they start bringing the big trucks in there? Because there's, if you look where that kid got killed a couple weeks ago or a month or so ago, the whole edge of that down there is completely deteriorated, gone, and up in front of my house, with it, and all the trees cracking out, falling off. People hit that constantly, the trailers coming over it, here, bam! But it's all the way to the center line.
So we're aware, given how this road is split now between annexed village on the west side and county on the right, we're well aware that we're gonna need to partner with the county on any full width improvements or repairs to that area.
Gonna need to do some improvement before they start coming, because there's trucks coming in there, I'm sure that's the point where it is not taking long. So you can go out and look at it, I got pictures on my phone.
And I'll get with the county engineer. I've been in touch with him once or twice on how we're gonna work the agreements for maintenance and things, not the annexation. So I'll check.
Anything else on this?
Greater Tracy?
I think what would help me, and if it comes to you, you know, if we forget anything out of the meeting, I do want to know what I need to work with the developer on. Obviously, we've heard quite a bit out of today. Topography, working on the trail for phase 1. Discussing, John, maybe the developer and I discussing a trail in lieu of sidewalks as a possible proposal. But from what the commission heard out of today, what other topics would you like us to focus on for the final meeting? If any.
I think there's some validity to connecting the two, show us a plan to connect. If it's in the future or what it's going to do. I think there is some validity to that down the road.
Are you talking about the road stubbing or the trail?
The road. Okay.
I do want to mention that what's been back of mind through both this and potentially our discussions with MI Homes, who may or may not build just north of this location, is that the school has mentioned the desire at some point to have a connector between the elementary and the high school. I don't know that we can or should postpone any one project. We don't have any concepts in the school yet, and I'm meeting with Ryan on Friday, so I'm gonna ask him about this, of what that connection would look like or where it would go. And we also have to bear in mind that it's gonna involve 4 different property owners. It's gonna happen, the village being one with its property on Dally, Schleybaugh being the likely future property owner here, Whistle Stop being the property owner to the west, and MI Homes potentially being the property owner to the north. So we can continue to keep that back of mind if there's a way to, and I think at some point we may want to get all 4 of those parties together, have a discussion. But
Church of Christ wouldn't be involved.
I don't know. I mean, if the school needs to acquire land from them to go through, or are they going to try and go around?
One is the access road.
So there's a lot of
questions.
there's a lot of questions around this through road, and given that the impact would be phase 3, 4 of this plan, I think we do have time, even if we plat this as it looks today. I don't know that we can't still have discussions and things about how we make that connection.
If you extended Valley. Yeah. It's unlikely that it would actually touch this port.
So I'm gonna ask Ryan if they're serious as a school about if he's willing to put some revenue toward a preliminary design on a connector road. That might help us as the village as we consider these developments as they come. But given that it's kind of a concept right now, I don't have anything good to propose. Because I'll be honest, I was looking at this and I met with Mr. Bean and I said, well, do we try and work with the developer to remove the 3 lots at the end of the far west cul-de-sac in anticipation of a connector? Or is that even not the best place for a connector? Or does it make more sense to have Road E cross the creek, then connect? Do the developments even want a potential? I mean, if this ends up going up to State Route 3, and Steven mentioned it, is this going to become a bypass from get off 3, go through this development to Broken Road? Does anybody want that? So there's a lot of unknowns that I don't know we should hold this development up for, nor, given the build out time, we probably have a couple of years to think about it.
They have, I think every time we work with Clay Lodge, excellent job working. Appreciate that. I'll give you my note.
I do want to mention, I've been doing some measurements on GIS maps. It looks like both in Mount Vernon and Johnstown, the cul-de-sac size was 80, I'm measuring 80, but probably 86 feet. The roadways in Johnstown, I think, were 20.
Somewhere right there.
So in Johnstown, it's 26, 27, in Mount Vernon, it's 30. We can discuss that a little more.
We'll continue conversation part of what
Yeah.
additional.
Are these 2-car garages?
I don't think they do a 1-car garage.
Okay, it doesn't state, so they could if they
They
wanted.
could technically, I guess, add to 3 if they wanted.
Okay, so this commission could recommend to the council that this would be a minimum 2-car garage development. Also, keep in mind that mounding along Croton Road, Julie, and I know she's in here, she's mentioned before, keeping the rural character If you look at some of these other developments have done that, the mounding with the landscaping, it really looks nice. And it still keeps the rural character. I'm sure Slayball would be tickled to death to do that because they're a good building.
And they do it in all the other, most of the other developments.
I feel great out anyway, great place to push it.
So I'm looking through the design, so one thing that Andrew brought me today was their design packet. I'm not seeing anything smaller than a two-car garage. I would ask maybe Schleba, if we make that a reduction below a two-car garage, a major adjustment, instead of a minor adjustment, if they're open to that.
What's their restrictions or two-car?
Should the setbacks be extended 5 feet, take 5 off the front, put it on the back? Because if you measure out the garage to the back of the sidewalk, and you got a 4-door pickup or a big limousine like some of the moms are driving, they're gonna be sticking on that sidewalk. I'm not saying make them smaller, just move, give them another 5 feet.
Or is there some design with the new path that some of the lots are further back, some, the ones not path adjoining?
What's the base price now?
I'll let Andrew correct me, but I've heard around average 500,000.
So 500 and up?
No.
Okay, then I'm wrong. Do we know what the range of market is?
I would say on average, 500 is fair. I don't know that that's like the end all be all starting point to enter something.
I've heard from developers that they have I'm not saying, other developers, like a 350,000 base model that very few people buy. So sometimes I'm seeing between 400 and 500, or 400 and 550, so. The average roughly I've heard of is 500,000. Anything else on the public hearing or this project? I don't have.
Moving on. Village application for gravel parking.
Commission, I don't necessarily have to request approval for this today. Obviously, the commission passed an allowance for gravel parking exceptions. That allowance would require this commission to grant any exception. That was passed by council in July, I believe. What I wanted to do, and as a good sample probably, if you do approve it for future applicants, is put together a request to the commission. I'd say if you want to take a meeting, or as long as the commission wants to consider it, basically it asks the village to be granted an exception to allow gravel parking at 27 North Hartford and 40 North Clayton, where buildings were recently moved. They've been functioning as gravel parking for a while. The reason this is important now is this commission granted the village a temporary exception for North Hartford that expires in October. So I wanted to make sure I got ahead of that expiration of that. So basically, what the plan outlines is the improvements the village plans to make next year, which includes putting aprons in, curb along the alley, Sugar Alley, for that parking lot, and then an apron, and continue to utilize the grass landscaping buffer on North Plain. So if you guys want to take some time to consider the application, I would maybe add it to next month's agenda for either approval or denial of the exception.
Yes, the North Hartford parking lot, there's still a water problem with neighbors.
Mhm.
I have no engineer.
Yeah.
You just ain't got a drain. We can put a pond in the middle of the parking lot, but it can't go towards the three houses.
Yeah, so one of the things we were hoping to do to relieve, so you're saying maybe do some sloping to get it away?
Yeah, because all goes up. I mean, I've seen it on plaster.
Yeah.
I'm just saying for grant, because this is why it's temporary use, right?
Yep.
We can ask for anything.
Yeah.
If you want a parking lot, we're gonna fix that
Yep.
first.
Correct. The other thing that we had gotten a quote on was, we know another part of that problem is all of the water coming out of the storm system on Main Street is draining into Sugar Alley, which is also cutting across neighbor properties. And so Alex and I thought we had enough budget this year for this unexpected improvement. The goal was to take that curb that we would run along the parking area, continue it all the way down Sugar Alley, put in some French drains on the driveway so that we're capturing all that stormwater off of Main Street and redirecting it down Preston, is that what it's Ewing, to the storm drain over there. The quote on that was about 42,000, which is reasonable. I just need to budget for it next year. So the goal with putting that curb in, and part of the reason it's gonna happen next year, is to ask council to fund the full project to redirect that stormwater. So if we can at least get that Main Street stormwater going into the alley.
Yeah, I wait to see further, where the building used to set, a good old green would work for that. With gutters.
Yeah.
And there was stuff inside the building, whole thing was water. Along there.
Okay. So I'll work with Alex and see what kind of,
There's 3 problems. And it's pretty bad.
we're aware, and the hope was that if we could get all that water off Main, it might mitigate some of the problems. Joe Harden, a little bit about it,
He's almost big as a cane wall.
Do you consider gravel permeable or impermeable?
you ask me this all the time. I consider gravel permeable, at least as it lays right now.
Or about
I also consider it more permeable than asphalt. But go ahead. What's your answer on gravel being permeable?
I've heard it both ways too. I think the more compact it is, the more it acts like asphalt.
So is the drainage problem gonna be fixed before October, or do we need to finish it? It's out now.
Let me ask Alex what we can do with the draining problem with the final fix. Yeah, we're probably not gonna get done until next summer when I have a new
You
budget.
always make it a condition too. Just take it right away from.
Just snag it. But if we can do some grading up there, I can see if we can do some regrading. I know when they did it, Alex said, we'll put some, kind of create a French drain to slow it down. Clearly that's not working. So, let me ask the guys if they can, try to think where they can put the water though.
And
Maybe I'll make, yeah, I'll make, Steven come out and tell him. Next time. All
You
right,
can drive by.
we'll work on it.
That's the
All right, we're gonna move to the next item.
Lot
So,
split.
don't we do your application? So we've had a request by a property owner. No, so if we're familiar with 27 South Hartford, where I live. And Cherry Alley, one of the property owners owns the house there at Hartford and Hartford Buildings. And they have a parking issue. One of the things that they've come to the village to kind of have a conversation about is potentially turning the backyard of the 27 South Hartford into a parking area for their residents at that house and I believe the building that they have. Originally, I think they wanted to do a lot split. So that was part of the conversation. They don't meet the requirements to do a lot split in that area. We could consider it. I think they wanted to do it so they could deed it as a parking area for the downtown at some other point. But either way, they want to try to consider that for gravel parking. Again, there will be requirements that you'll have to look at. So my question before I go back to them was, what are your thoughts on doing a lot split? Is it something that we would consider or?
See something we're looking at.
I can't pull it up whether it's good this on,
Walk this up. And for everybody,
but I don't know if you can describe it better than me here.
probably not.
I'm talking about here.
I'd say first we need to do a stormwater study on
That's right, yeah.
So he hasn't, we've just talked about that, it's been going on for.
Yeah, I'll say this, so
Since Barry.
I haven't, yes, since Terry was here, I haven't thought about this much, but the initial ask was they wanted to split the lot, take basically the backyard off,
Mhm.
then combine that lot with the building they own that's right along Main Street, crossing the alley.
Is it contiguous?
I mean, you could consider it contiguous, but realistically, there's an alley cutting through. So now what we would end up doing by the lot split and combine is we create a lot that crosses an alley. This is not impossible, it's not undoable. Just part of me thought, why would we do this? Like, if you want a gravel parking lot, you have a property that already qualifies for the exception we talked about.
Just report it as needed.
Yeah, do it without a lot split combined. Now, I don't know that I feel strongly one way or the other. It just seems goofy to have a lot crossing an alley as one solid lot. Maybe Steven has thoughts from an engineering standpoint, but it's probably more planning. Yeah.
How many they would create? It'd probably be like 6 total. Max. I don't think there's any way they can get more than 8. I think it'd probably be 6. I think they have gravel parking there, like small gravel parking there right now, like wall. Their thought was just, hey, can we gravel the whole thing, use it for parking?
There's a little water, we don't think it's large enough.
I would assume that they're gonna have to.
But again, part of the reason I think the village is testing the water is if this is the type of format you want to see for these exceptions, I can give this to Mr. Loudermilk. He can structure a proposal to you similar to what the village is providing.
That's kind of why we didn't put it on, it's generalized discussion. I like, hey, the village is gonna kind of go first on the gravel parking. I kind of want to give him like some sort of feedback. You know, this is what these, I think we shared the requirements with them. So it's not gonna come to an absolute surprise, just kind of, these are the considerations we're gonna have to make when you think about it. And just kind of like what the temperature is at all.
You're basically asking us to make a decision.
Yeah, we don't, well, not even to make a decision, just like, is it something that you would consider before he spends any money?
Need to look at it.
Yeah. So
I can visualize.
I'll give you a visual before the next meeting, like prior to the next meeting, so you can look at what we're talking about. And then just kind of take a, is it something we would consider at all? Because I don't want him to waste time, effort, energy, and money.
You need an alley. Required to keep the alley.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a through alley.
I'm just asking.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
So I think what he was trying to do was, I think that the Griffiths property has like paid parking behind it. And he was trying to do like the same, hey, if I can grab this house, maybe I can parcel this back off, make this dedicated parking. Now I have parking spaces for the building, is I think the line of thinking, so. It's just a little bit different of a setup. So I can do a visual on the next one. We can ponder over the month, I'll get back with them. Just tell them kind of where we're at.
What's the reason for that?
I think you want to split it off so you can eat it to this.
I'm sure if ever that property is gonna be marketed, he wants to sell it in the parking area.
Correct.
I just don't know that we can help.
So that's so it's any visuals you can do.
have more activity next meeting? No. You have a motion to adjourn? Mayor? Second?
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
You ran a good meeting.
Hey, get your ass on.
Oh, no, I just meant.
My buddy's been in the emergency room like twice in the last 2 days. Like now. His cops so much, I read for open doors, it's like, fast.
You know, when you come back.
We feel the same. I think we're all kind of sidestepping around. So do we give it another? Cool. Thanks, man. You're great. Thanks for that. Yes, appreciate it.
The last one.
It would do, right here.